Good evening and welcome to Ben TV. Tonight we're looking at body image, and for this I have my special guests. I have Glen, a psychologist, I have Nick, a personal trainer, and Grant, another psychologist. So welcome, sit down, hope you've got your cuppers ready and enjoy the show. Now, gentlemen, what would you like to change about yourself?
I'm sucking my stomach in at the moment. Well, I mean, I guess we've all got something that we want to change about ourselves, don't we? I think we do, don't we?
Yeah, I'd probably be, if anything, I'd probably be a foot taller.
Wear high heels.
No, that's about it for me. Yeah, just height.
It's funny, that's the first thing that came to mind for me as well.
Yeah.
Is height.
I don't know, I think I'd like to be slimmer.
Oh yeah, I'd like a six-pack.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I think it would look better for TV as well if you had the six-pack.
But I do wonder, like, when someone has a six-pack, are they, like, thinking, oh, well, I would like it to be like this? Or I think, is it a point where you can never get to the top of the mountain?
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think even for world-class athletes, figure athletes, that I know coming from, my industry as a PT, even from watching documentaries on them, they're never happy about, they've never quite got there. They're always trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to make themselves look better. So they never really, I don't think they ever really get to where they want to be.
There's a quote I have in my cubicle at work from, I've forgotten his name, David Gandy. I think he's one of the world's only male supermodels, and saying that he's really unhappy with the way he looks, and he's incredible looking. So it just shows that someone's body is not the same as their body image. They can be quite different.
I agree with you. I think most models have that fear that they're not perfect and would like to be able to change. So with leading on to that, how do we deal then with having that, that we're not quite there? How do we deal with them with being different?
I think, how do I deal with being different?
Yeah, how do you deal?
Well, how am I different?
Well, you're different to me. You're not me, and I'm perfect.
Well, I think the big part about that is just about being realistic about your look and your body and everything like that. I think that if anyone who thinks about themselves in an extreme kind of way, like I'm extremely unattractive or I'm extremely attractive, are going to get themselves into some kind of emotional trouble. And so it's really, for me, I think, important to be just realistic about how you look and accepting of how you look, whether it be however it is.
I think you're right there with you're talking about acceptance of yourself. You can only really work with what you've got or what you've been given when you were born. So, like with me, I know that I'm never going to be 6 foot tall. So I've just got to accept it and move on and just be the best that I can be as I am.
Do you find as a personal trainer you get people come and see you and with that unrealistic expectation that they can, be this buff, muscly person and their genes just don't allow for it?
Yeah, you do, especially like you see and it's more from maybe a female's perspective where they'll see the models in magazines that have been airbrushed and they're got stick thin legs. They want that too, but it's not always, you can't sort of just give that to someone, if you know what I mean. Like it's the people the models you see in magazines, they're genetically gifted and all the rest, so they sometimes that's not always obtainable.
So how do you help people like that?
You just like I said, you just have to explain to them.
So like a really frank discussion.
Yeah, you just have to be, because you don't want to give someone a false hope as well. You don't want to say, okay, I can do that for you, and then 6 months down the track, they're not there. So, you have to tell them up front, well, that's not always obtainable. These people you see in magazines, they're genetically gifted. They're always going to be like that, and have been sometimes enhanced or modified as well.
So that's about realistic.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring up about the media, because people, much like a hairdresser, they might come with a photo of what they want to look like or an ideal. And I've started doing some therapeutic groups for gay men on body image. And one thing I do in one session is I bring in these 2 photos, and they're 2 photos of the same guy, and one of them has been completely airbrushed and altered. And I just don't say anything. I run them around the group to see what they think of the photos, if they can see what the original photo was. And the guys thought they were before and after photos from working and training, and they were actually the same guy completely altered. So give guys six packs where they never had them, give them an extra, centimetres on their shoulders, where they look so incredibly realistic that it helped them realise the guys that they're looking at in magazines and wanting to be like, the guys in the photos don't even look like the guys in the photos. So it's that idea of really starting to look at imagery in the media and challenging it.
Well, I was going to say, I do laugh these days. In certain magazines, they will tell you, oh, our models are airbrushed, and we all love to go and read the magazines, whether it's health and fitness or,
DNA.
I wasn't going to label them, but and we like looking at the boys in the pictures, but they're not real.
But I don't know that we always have that kind of knowledge about that. I think that probably most people would look at those kind of magazines and think, I can have that, or I should have that, or I want to have that, or I'm sad that I don't have that, without that kind of realistic appreciation that there's probably a whole lot of doctoring of it.
Absolutely, it's part of, I guess, that realisation and moving towards questioning the media and saying, well, it's actually there to sell something. What is it there to sell? But if you don't have that education, you are falling into that trap of constantly comparing yourself to the ideal, and especially to men who have what you don't have. So there's that filtering, and it constantly makes you feel like you're not up to it.
How does being in the closet deal, you think, with body image?
Well, I can only talk from my own experience, I guess, that probably when I was in the closet, I probably had a really different effect of body appreciation or thinking about body image. I suppose being out of the closet, you're suddenly surrounded in the gay community by this huge focus on how you look, and that's enormous.
I think I'd have to agree. My body image changed when I came out onto the scene, which for me was my early 20s. And before that, I was an athlete, so I had, and I didn't even think about body image really, until I got out in the gay scene, and then I started to become quite obsessed with what my body was like and how much fat I had or how much muscle I had, which wasn't there at all beforehand when I was just, being an athlete and valuing what my body did as opposed to what it looked like.
Do you think that's healthy?
It wasn't. It wasn't. Then I started working in the fitness industry and got a bit extreme with the dieting, and I stopped. Tried to cut all the fat and sugar out of my diet. I only cooked with water, for instance, and had lots of caffeine because caffeine burns fat. And the fitness industry, this was back in the 90s, it wasn't that healthy to work in because you want to look like
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're on Ben TV watching the body image episode. We're about to take a short break from our sponsors, so I promise you, go and get yourself a cuppa and come right back. Thank you. Welcome back to Ben TV, and tonight we're looking at body image. And now I'm going to talk about what we think that drives then our body image. So, how do you think thinking drives body image?
I think it's a huge part of body image, of course, because it's all really about perception. How do you perceive how you look? How do you perceive how you look in comparison to other people? And like we were saying before, a lot about that is about when it becomes unrealistic, or when someone doesn't accept themselves because they think that their body image is much different or isn't as good as it should be. And so, thinking's really, I think, a central part to the overall perception of body image.
Yeah, you're right. I think, and it's the same. Like from, say, my perspective, working in a gym, you get a lot of clients comparing themselves to other, or not clients, but maybe other, gym members comparing themselves to other people in the gym that look completely different, and they're saying, "Well, I want to look like that person," or I should I look like this person, or and that's how can you really? You're right. It's not really healthy to be sort of thinking that way. Whereas you should be thinking, well, what can I do with myself, rather than comparing yourself to what other people look like.
But it is sort of a process that people have to go through, I think, of saying, well, I'm never going to have that. It's almost like you've got to kind of work through that and get to that kind of acceptance that this is how my body is, and the best that I can do with it is A, B or C.
That's it. Yeah,
and I guess it's sort of really good for people to be able to get to that kind of point.
Yeah.
But up until that stage, it can be really hard.
Oh, it can be, yeah.
And I think they think with a filter too, so they're only really thinking about the things that they don't like and almost focusing entirely on it, rather than thinking of other aspects of their bodies which they may like, which other people may like, they probably, if they get a compliment, they'll minimise it and that sort of thing. So there's this filter of only taking in information that builds on their theory that they're not looking good enough.
That's negative thinking. So if you have a negative thinking, it doesn't matter what positive thoughts are said, it's going to be eaten up. So how do you reverse negative thinking to control that voice that's going off in everybody's head? I know our audience would all have thoughts going off at the moment. They might be thinking they should go and get a cup or something, but we're hoping they're staying here with us.
As if they're thinking that.
How do we control that thought process that happens so then we can then look at giving better outcomes?
I think it starts with probably observing yourself and observing your thinking patterns and noticing when they are negative, noticing what is the evidence, am I ignoring other sorts of evidence, am I starting to imagine what other people might be thinking about me without any evidence at all. So that sort of mind reading sort of misconception, thinking, oh, they've spoken to me that way because they think I look unattractive, rather than they might have had a bad day, there could be other things going on. So it starts probably with having a think about, am I distorting the way I'm thinking, and then challenging it, looking for the evidence, looking for evidence of the opposite, and it's it's a commitment to continue to challenge your thinking. It's not easy to do.
It's very easy to get into patterns of thinking as well. That thinking is something that's well practiced and it becomes automatic. And so really, what people can do is try and, as Grant's saying, observe those kind of patterns and look for the evidence for and against and so on and so forth. But then practice thinking in a different way, because that's how it becomes automatic, rather than going into the old sort of familiar, if it is a negative pattern of thinking, that's going to be something that's really comfortable for people because it's so well practiced. But if someone's able to practice something different and practice that more realistic kind of way of thinking where they look at all of the evidence rather than just a narrow kind of view at it, then they're going to think about themselves in a much more realistic and healthy way.
Nick, because you do work at gym and are there all the time, you probably see people who are there 7 days a week. Do you think what's their thinking that's driving that?
Yeah, I think maybe it can even become like an obsession for them, rather than, for some people it's a daily habit for them. But others you might think, oh well, it looks like, especially when they're there, twice a day, because I'm there working twice a day, that sort of thing, morning and evening. You think, well, there might be other factors, rather than them just trying to live a healthy lifestyle, rather than thinking that they have to be there, or they'll feel bad about themselves if they don't go in, tonight or in the morning, or well, they might think, oh, well, I've seen someone else going there, so I have to go and do it too because someone else is doing it. So
it's really about getting a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it's certainly known that no exercise can have a really negative impact on mood, and certainly exercise can help moods, but probably too much exercise can become, as you say, that kind of obsession.
Yeah.
How do we deal with shame, failure, or perceived inadequacies in our lives?
I wouldn't know how to answer. I think, again, it comes back to realism. That, of course, everyone is going to experience shame and failure in their life, but they're also going to experience success and positive experiences. And that's just part of being a human being, that, of course, we always have these sorts of things as part of this kind of rich tapestry of who we are. And if we focus too much on the shame or the failure, then, of course, we're going to feel pretty miserable about ourselves, because we're not looking at the success that comes in our lives.
I want to bring in, because I know at one point you were a bit larger.
Yeah, a lot larger.
Had a few extra kilos.
Yeah.
Did you feel shame about that?
No, not at all. And probably, I used to not really appreciate, I was at one point about 110 kilos, and I used to see myself in photos and be shocked by it. Whereas, I don't think that it was sort of a negative kind of thing, that I would feel bad about the way that I looked. I used to think, okay, I'm a little overweight or something like that, but I never sort of saw it in a negative kind of way, which is I'm glad about.
I think too, in particular, like failure, in terms of overcoming it, if you look at it as a way, okay, well, this didn't work out for me, I've learned from it, and I won't allow that to happen again, or I won't be in a position where I'm going to feel bad about myself from failing, then you can sort of move on pretty quickly from it.
And I guess looking at how much what you're adding to that success or failure, if you're saying, well, I didn't lose those few kilos I really wanted to lose, so now I'm going to be single, I'm going to be miserable, people are going to hate me, I'm going to have to stay in the house, I'm going to lose jobs, it just
Really
snowballs.
catastrophizing it, yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to say it's kind of common, and I hear about it especially for gay men, that they find because they have body image issues, they can't find that they can go into a club or can't find they can go to a bar. What are ways that they can, if they drive up and then park their car and then they sit in their car for an hour and then drive back again, what are the ways they can feel to be happy about themselves?
I think that's one of the saddest things that body image can do to people. It can stop them from experiencing many things in life. So they won't, go to a public pool or going to the club, anywhere they think that people might be judging their appearance.
And most of the time, people aren't judging their appearance anyway. Most of the time, that's an unrealistic thing that people think, because I weigh this or I look like this, that everyone's looking at me. And most of the time, no one's looking.
I've had clients that have said when they've walked into a gay bar and said, well, everyone turns and looks. But everyone turns and looks because it's someone new walking in often, and they think that they're actually doing an immediate judgment and that they find that quite confronting. But if they can get past that and continue and challenge those sort of things, there's good rewards.
Well, thanks Grant and Glen for that. We're going to go to a short break from our sponsors and we'll be back shortly. You're on Ben TV tonight and we're looking at body image with my guests Glen, Nick and Grant. And Nick, some people when they go to a gym, they find it a huge psychological barrier to actually get in. What are ways that they can do to feel comfortable about being in their own skin, about not necessarily just going to a gym, but going outside? People sometimes think that they can't even walk down the street for exercise. Yeah,
well, in particular going to the gym, look, there's sort of no real, it's not really a place where you are judged. Like, everyone's there doing the same thing. Everyone's there trying to make themselves either look better or feel better about themselves. And they're not the only ones that are there that are going to feel intimidated or nervous about going in. So, and other things they can do is maybe if they are feeling that way, they're nervous about going to a gym for the first time, there's quiet times during the day when there's not many people there, then they can sort of start to go at that period of the day where they might feel a bit more comfortable about going in. So
I'll bring both my psychologists in, because I know there are people probably who feel trapped at home because they are that extra few kilos, or they feel that their body image doesn't fit what it should. What are the methods they can have so they can have feel that they can leave the house and, go to the shops, go walk on the street?
Well, I think a big part of it is just doing it. That there's a lot about avoidance is going to quite often reinforce the problem, that the more someone doesn't do something, the more they create it as a difficulty in their own thinking, whereas by actually going and doing it, you're challenging a lot of that thinking, and you're able to actually go and experience the rewards that you might get from actually doing that thing, whether it be going to a gym or walking to a club or whatever. That the more you don't do it, the worse it quite often gets in your own mind.
And you build these expectations of doom that are going to happen, and it does stop you, because you're right, the more you don't, the bigger it is in your mind. But if you can also challenge it in just little steps as well, rather than straight away going into going to the beach in your your swimmers, is just gradually challenge yourself a little bit further. Notice that you did okay, a little bit uncomfortable, it wasn't as bad as you thought. Next time you go a little bit further, challenge yourself a bit more.
How do you think you can build a life based on your own passions and values to live this authentic life?
Well, authenticity is really central in my own thinking. I think that a huge part of being happy is being authentic. But I think probably the first thing about that is finding what those values are, and getting to a point where you're able to reflect on, okay, what is the way that I want to try and live my life, and who is the kind of person that I want to be. And it's probably healthy, I think, to do that from yourself rather than external kind of expectations.
And I think probably also surrounding yourself with people that have sort of having a positive influence on you as well, which will help sort of bring you up more, rather than, if you associate with a circle of people that are, have a negative influence on your life or their own life, that's sort of going to drag you down.
I was going to say, Nick, I know you were in corporate world once and you made a big decision to go and become a personal trainer. What was some of the thinking that drove that change?
there was a couple of things, obviously, financially, but
You got
I'd been in my previous role for in the corporate world for about 9 years. Wanted to run my own business, and I knew that I would be happy doing something I loved doing, which was being in the fitness industry. So once I'd made my mind up, I'd planned it all out. It was an easy move for me.
I think identifying your values, as you were saying, Glenn, is an important thing, and it's sort of the way that I've worked with body image, is to be able to work out what your values are and then act towards what your values are. So, for instance, being able to go out and do things that usually challenge you, or be around certain people that your value is to be more social and to challenge the barriers. But I agree with Nick around the supports and having the right people around you, because there's nothing like gay men getting together and going on about their bodies and bitching about the guys walking past to continue that body image stuff.
Exactly.
So how do you challenge that and change that?
Well, you can challenge. I mean, you might be able to comfortably challenge your friends, or you might choose to change who you hang around with, and just have that look at your filter and maybe start to alter your filter about what you're listening to and what you're taking on board and what you're not.
And you don't have to accept it. That people all around you can be really obsessed with body image, but it only becomes a problem for you if you go along with that same way of thinking. And so there can be all sorts of things going on around you, but it's only a problem when you fall into the same kind of pattern, and that's really when it's only going to have an impact.
It's the same with the media stuff. It's learning to challenge all those various external influences that are coming in that you can buy into or not buy into.
How do you challenge the media? Because the media has been, this year I think especially, very divisive, especially with gay marriage, and gays are seen as being totally different species to the rest of the human race. How does, if you're reading like the newspaper or watching on the television?
It can certainly be hard because it can trigger quite emotional, and I've read certainly many things about anti-gay marriage that have triggered me. But it's looking at where it's coming from, what the source is, what the agenda of the source might be. With body image, all the imagery stuff is about selling this or that, and sex sells, and it's about realising that. But no, and there's an interesting counterculture in gay culture, I think, also, which is getting away from everything being hairless, muscly man, and especially in like the bear culture, where there's all sorts of different types of bears, and going to certain dance parties where they don't want you to wear fragrance or blue jeans, and getting away from this one type of ideal gay man, which I think is really healthy.
I think a lot of that is really about appreciating the entire community, that you can surround yourself by all sorts of people, and just because there's a negative opinion in the paper or something like that, that's one negative opinion written by one person who's trying to get a headline, who's trying to get published, whereas you can also surround yourself by a whole range of other sorts of opinions, and it doesn't have to be the opinion that you focus on, that's one negative thing that's written, but it could be in the context of a whole lot of positive things. And I think in the media there's a lot that's written that's really good about the gay community and good about gay marriage. So it is a balance, I think.
Grant, I want to pick up one thing you said about different communities within the gay community. I don't think I fit into the twink community. I don't think I fit into the bear community or the otter community. Does that mean I'm an extreme freak?
Not at all. I mean,
a nice direct question. Yes.
Well, do we all have to fit into different categories and pigeonholes to be part of the gay community? Because there are people that don't fit into any of them, and do we have to create new ones for them, or do we just accept that you might be a bit of this or a bit of that, or be just you?
Well, the gay community is not different from any other community where there are diversities within it, and just like someone who's in the Jewish community or the straight community, they might not fit into a particular stereotype. Stereotypes are extremes, and they're stereotypes because they are extremes, and most people are not going to fit into one of the extremes. The extreme or the stereotype is what other people outside of the community tend to latch onto rather than those within it.
One final tip from everybody on how to live a happy life.
Be authentic and accepting.
Yeah, exactly. Accept yourself. Just surround yourself with positive people, and
come for you for personal training.
Yeah.
Acknowledge your strengths. Take some time out to acknowledge your strengths and your positive points as well, because we can get quite focused on the negative stuff.
Well, I would like to thank Grant, Nick and Glenn for being here on Ben TV tonight. If you'd like more information about Ben TV, please jump on our website, bentv.org.au, or you can email us at feedback at benttv.org.au. And we'll be back next week on Bent TV. In the meantime, enjoy living a nice, happy life. Thank you.